Hello everyone, we are Group 1 and today we present about our macroeconomic project. So let's get started. So on the screen, this is our topic, is that always a public problem? So this is our 5 members, they are Ngân, Jin, Me, Tai and Geek. This is our table of contents. There are 6 parts. First, we'll talk about the introduction, then the distinguishing of public debt and private debt, and then we'll talk about when that is not a public problem and when that becomes a public problem, the intergenerational and institutional perspective. And the last part will be the conclusion. It will include some examples, some case study, and some recommendations. So moving to the main part is the introduction.
So now let's look at the first introduction. So the first is definition. Public debt refers to the total accumulated amount of money that a government owes to domestic and foreign creditors, resulting from repeated budget deficit over time. This includes money borrowed through instruments such as government bonds, treasury bills, and loans. Public debt reflects the government's past fiscal decision and is used to finance public spending such as infrastructure, education, healthcare, and social welfare. There are some factors. First, the budget deficit. Public debt increases when a government consistently spends more than it collects in revenue. These budget deficits are often the primary source of public debt, especially during the period of economic difficulty. The second is economic recessions. During the economic downturns, tax revenue tends to fall while government spending on unemployment benefits and social welfare rises. As a result, government often borrow more, leading to higher public debt even without deliberate policy expansion. The third is expansionary fiscal policy. Governments may intentionally run deficits to stimulate economic growth, following Keynesian economic principles. Increased public spending on infrastructure, education, or healthcare can raise public debt in the short term. The fourth, wars and economic risks. Major events such as wars, financial crisis, or pandemics require large and sudden increases in government spending, which are commonly financed through borrowing. And the last is demographic changes. An aging population increases government expenditure on pension and healthcare while reducing the size of the labor force and tax base, placing long-term pressure on public finance.
So now I will talk about the distinguishing of public debt and private debt. So for the public debt is money borrowed by the government to finance public spending when government expenditure exceeds the tax revenue, and the purpose of this is for public goods and services like infrastructure, education, healthcare, or defense. But the rest of it is excessive public debt may increase tax burdens and threaten fiscal sustainability. And for the private debt, is money borrowed by individuals or private firms to finance consumption or investment. Purpose of this is about consumption like houses or cars or business investment. And the risk of it is high private debt can lead to revolts and financial crisis.
My name is Jin and I'm going to talk about when debt is not a public problem. From economic standpoint, public debt does not ultimately constitute a public problem. Its impact depends on how it's used, how long it's relative to the economic capacity, who holds it, and the time horizon considered. It's, in the short run, public debt can help stabilize economic activity, while in the long run, it can support sustainable growth if managed responsibility. First we will discuss about value for productive investment. Productive investment for the short-term impact in short run, women borrowing to finance productive public investments stimulate accurate demand, increase spending on infrastructures, education, healthcare, and research raise output and employment, particularly during economic downturn when private demand is weak. Fiscal expansion can help close recessionary gaps and prevent prolonged unemployment. For the long-term impact, in long run, productive investment enhance the economy productive capacity, improve in infrastructure, human capital, and technology. More and also increase labor productivity and capital efficiency. If the social rate of return on public investment exceeds the interest rate on government borrowing, that contribute to higher potential output and future tax revenue, thereby improving fiscal sustainability rather than undermining it. And next, we move to that is sustainable level for short term. In short term, moderate level of public debt allow government to respond flexibly to economic shock without immediate fiscal constraint. While interest rates are low and well prospect as a stable, tax surprising costs remain manageable, reducing concern about fiscal solvency and market confidence. For long-term impact, over long term, that sustainability depends on the relationship between economic growth and interest rate. As long as growth rate of economy exceeds the interest rate up on public debt, government can stabilize or even reduce the debt on GDP ratio over time. Sustainable debt level remain a excessive tax burden on future generation and reserve fiscal space for future policy intervention. Here's the jack of how public debt involving instead of level of public debt, a sharp GDP in selected country in 2020 and change over 2 years in the percentage. We can say that Japan has 260% of GDP and United States, Italy, France are 400. For some countries like Germany, China, and India significantly lower. So let's also illustrate that dynamic over the period 2021 and 2021 to 2023. Some countries have reduced their debt ratio, like Germany, the United Kingdom, Canada. Others have increased the debt ratio, like United States and China. So just directly illustrate the core argument of Section 4. A high level of public debt does not automatically institute a public problem. What matters is sustainability over time. Next is the debt held domestically. In short term, in short run, when public debt is likely held by domestic resident or institution, interest payment remain within the national economy to support household income and consumption while reducing exposure to external financial shock and exchange rate risk. For the long-term impact, in long run, domestic ownership of public debt enhances financial stability and policy autonomy. Government face lower rollover risk and reduce vulnerable to sudden capital outflow. As a result, domestically held public debt is less likely to trigger balance of payment price or undermine macroeconomic stability. Next part of this topic is when debt become a public problem. Despite a potential benefit, public debt can become a public problem when it reaches excessive level of irresponsible management. Importantly, while short-term effect might be manageable, the more serious economic consequences of excessive debt tend to emerge over the long run. Firstly, the crowding out effect. Short-term impact in short run, and particularly during recession. Government borrowing money have limited crowding out effect if private investment demand is weak. Interest rate may remain stable and fiscal expansion can coexist with the accommodative monetary policy. For a long-term impact, in long run, persistent government borrowing increase demand for loanable funds, driving up interest rate, higher borrowing costs, discourage private investment, reducing capital accumulation, and slowing long-term economic growth. The crowding out effect weaken economy productive potential. Next one is fiscal stress and tax burden. Such impact in short-term high public debt may not immediately require higher tax or spending cuts. Government can roll over existing debt or rely on financial market confidence. For long-term impact, Over time, rising debt, servicing costs, consume a growing share of government revenues. Government may be forced to raise tax or cut productive corporate spending, high tax, distort labor supply and investment incentive, reducing economic efficiency, while spending cuts might undermine public service and infrastructure, lowering long-run growth. Next one is the risk of default and inflation. According to the short-term impact, government might avoid default part, continue borrowing or monetary expansion. Inflationary pressure may remain limited if the economic slack up if monetary policy credibility is strong. And the long-term impact, a sustainable debt level increase the risk of sovereign default of persistent inflation. Default undermine investor confidence and financial stability, while inflation erodes purchasing power and disproportionately help and harm low-income households. Both outcomes impose public costs and weaken long-term economic development.
Moving to this part is about intergenerational and institutional perspective. So public debt raises concerns about intergenerational equity because future generations may bear the cost of current borrowing through higher taxes, reduced public spending, or inflation. However, the burden of public debt depends on how it's used. When borrowing finances long-term, productivity-enhancing investment, future generations may benefit from higher growth that offsets debt servicing costs. Empirical evidence shows that debt outcomes vary across countries due to differences in institutional quality and fiscal governance. So, effective fiscal management matters more than debt size alone in shaping intergenerational impacts.
We move to the next part is solution and recommendation. The first thing you need to understand the interest rate. You know that the interest rate have a big impact on debt. If you have a long time to repay, you need to pay a lot of money, and you need to use the debt for value things such as education, investment. When you borrow money to achieve higher education, you will have more opportunity to get a job with a higher income, and you will have money to repay, and you can saving it. And another way is you can start off with that money. If you are a startup, you have your own business, so you can manage your money flow. Another thing, you need to keep the debt in moderate level. Because if you can keep in the moderate level, you cannot afford to repay it. And you also need to avoid the emotional borrowing. There's someone who borrow money for gambling or buying luxury thing because of the trend. They are unnecessary, so you need to use that in the right way and make sure that you can repay it. So the most important thing is that you need to prepare some crucial skills. The first one is saving. The second one is discipline. Then repayment schedule, and the final is to set a financial goal.
So today I will talk about public debt and private debt and answer the questions, is public debt always a problem? So first, let's talk at the private debt. So a common example is the household mortgage. So households borrow money from banks to purchase housing, and these loans are usually paid over a long period of time. And in most countries, mortgage loans are the largest source of debt for households. And another example is firm borrowing. So firm borrows money from banks to finance investment, such as machinery, factories, or new technologies. And these business loans are used to expand production capacities or support the firm growth. So next, let's move to the public debt. One example is COVID-19 stimulus spending. So during the pandemic, government borrowed to finance income support program and emergency transfer to households. And these public borrow help stabilize the economy and prevent a shortfall in aggregate demand. So another example is infrastructure spending. So government issues bond to finance large infrastructure projects such as highway or public transport. So these public investment improve connectivities and support long-term economic growth. So now let's answer the main questions with a case study. from Japan. So Japan public debt exceeds 250 times 50% of GDP, and which is the highest among advanced economies. And despite the very high level of debt, Japan had not experienced a sovereign debt crisis at all. And the reason is that Japan's debt it issues in its own currency, the yen, and like the interest rate are very low, and Japan has strong domestic saving, so that it support. The central bank plays a very important role in supporting government bond market. So the key message here is that public debt does not necessarily cause economic problem. What matters is the debt sustainability, in which is it depends on the economic conditions, interest rate, and institutions, not on the side of the debt alone.